Our gospel passage today comes from the Gospel of Matthew. I'm going to be reading kind of a familiar passage from Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 through 33. Hear the word of our Lord. Immediately he made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead to the other side, while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up to the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But by this time the boat, battered by the waves, was far from land, for the wind was against him. And early in the morning he came walking to them on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, saying, "It's a ghost!" And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart. It is I. Don't be afraid." Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat, started walking on the water, and came towards Jesus. But when he noticed the strong wind, he became frightened, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him, "You of little faith, why do you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." The word of our Lord. Thanks be to God. So I have to start this sermon with how much I love Peter. In Matthew chapter 16, a couple of chapters away from us today, Jesus pronounces this very unique blessing on Peter. He says that on this rock, the church of Jesus will be built. It's interesting that Peter and Paul are the only major characters in the New Testament that get a name change. Peter's former name, of course, is Simon, and Paul's a little bit closer to his own. It's Saul instead of Paul. But Simon and Saul are their former selves. Peter and Paul are their redeemed and renewed selves. But man, Peter dumb. Let's just forget for 5 seconds his betrayal outside of the high priest's house after following Jesus' arrest. Throughout all four Gospels, if anybody is going to put their foot in their mouth, if anybody is going to say the wrong thing or make stupid assumptions, it's Peter. And maybe the reason I identify with Peter personally is because I'm the one always saying the wrong thing or making stupid jokes and assumptions. And it's interesting that the one time that Peter is right, that's when Jesus gives him this blessing of being the foundation of the church. Peter is the epitome of humankind in their old habits and their comfort zones. Us adults in particular are especially bad about it. We like to make fun of teenagers saying, "Oh, they think they know everything. Oh, they've just got a little bit they think they know everything. They think they have a wealth of knowledge and experience." But I think God says the same thing about us. Because compared to God, age-wise, we're all just babies. I have a pretty stagnant morning routine most days. My first stop is typically to Dunkin' Donuts. And I've become so regular there that Michelle, the morning manager, not only does she know my name and know my voice, she knows my order. It's not usual, but sometimes somebody forgets to put in my order or screws it up or whatever. She knows it by heart. That's how frequent I've been there over the last 10 years that they've been open. Humans suffer from house blindness and rigid routines because of our comfort zones. And adults are typically way worse than children, in my opinion, because kids are constantly having to grow and learning new things in school and in life and in the world. House blindness, does everybody know what I'm talking about? You walk into your kitchen and you see a sink full of dirty dishes, and you say, oh, I'll get to that. I'll do that a little bit later. I'm tired. I'm going to go sit down for a bit. And then you could walk past it again. Oh, I know, I'm tired. It's time to go to bed. I'll do those first thing in the morning. And you keep kind of putting it off until you just become blind to the fact that you got a sink full of dirty dishes. My blindness comes in the form of white dog hair from our dog Max. It's not unusual. About once every 3 months I start going, did it snow in here? Oh, we need to brush the dog and maybe run a vacuum through the house because it's starting to look like, Denver in January in here. What does your comfort zone look like? What are the things in your life that you ignore because no one is calling you on it? They can be household chores like my examples, but it can also be behaviors and thought processes. There's this idea in spirituality called the awareness of self. Richard Rohr, who's a Franciscan priest who lives in Albuquerque, New Mexico, says that most of the time we are on autopilot, or we are using automatic responses to people and to situations every single day. And that's really what fuels our preconceived notions and stereotypes. The overly chatty coworker thinks that I'm a jerk because I'm being a little cold and aloof on a Monday morning, when really I'm just trying to dive into my emails. I got 150 emails from Friday at 5 to Monday at 8. I need to wade through the spam and start getting going on the things that I need to be doing. When you lock your doors at Winters Freeway and Buffalo Gap Road because of the homeless person who is panhandling, that's a fear response. And I'm guilty of doing that too. It doesn't mean that you're an unkind person, and it doesn't mean that you're judgmental towards the homeless, but it sure looks that way. Father Rohr furthers this idea that we are much less self-aware than we think we are. So he has a statistic, and it's not based on empirical evidence, but he's had 50 years of doing ministry as a Catholic priest between his numerous calls. What percentage do you think Father Rohr says that we are conscious and aware of ourselves? That's a real question. You think it's 50% of the time? Maybe 30? Maybe we're really bad 20% of the time? Father Rohr says, on a good day, we are aware of ourselves 5% of the time. If we're really, really locked in, maybe 15. And he includes himself in that. He's not saying he's better than everybody else. He's including himself in that he is just going through the motions every single day. He has his morning routine like we all do. First we get up, we go brush our teeth, we get in the car, we go to work. He's in this game as well. And the analogy that I always like to use when talking about conscious versus unconscious self or automatic responses is that of a car. Father Rohr says that you are driving, your unconscious self is the one that's driving the car. And your conscious self is just right there in the passenger seat. So it's there, and it's seeing the same thing, but it's not the driving factor. Let me tell you, I go to Midland and Lubbock, Texas frequently to visit my sales offices, to deal with customers and to deal with staff issues and whatnot. And as soon as I get on I-20, just outside of Ty, I'm on automatic pilot, looking for an audiobook or a podcast or calling a friend or something, because I am asleep at the wheel. I'm not asleep at the wheel, but mentally I'm checked out, because it's one place at Roscoe where it splits off 84 going to Lubbock or I-20 going straight down to Midland, Texas. There's not a whole lot going on down there. This is what Father Rohr is saying that we are like, that we're just kind of floating. And in order to get out of our unconscious selves, we have to get out of our normal routine. Do you know when I appreciate Abilene drivers the most? After I've been to Dallas or actually Midland, Texas. And it's actually very unique. They have two types of bad drivers. In Midland, they have guys in big rigs that are trying to drive like Corvettes, and they're literally thousands and tons of weight moving at 80 miles an hour down I-20, and that scares the bejesus out of me. And in Dallas, it is an actual Corvette or a motorcycle that's splitting the lanes and going 150 miles an hour, and here I'm just trundling at 60 or 70 miles an hour down the interstate or down the freeway, and boom, somebody comes right past me. Whew. Abilene does have a couple of squirrels out there on the road, but generally I get real gracious after I come back from Dallas or Midland. Not that hard. If you take some time to get out of your normal everyday routine and to mix it up, your conscious self will take over. So when was the last time you were out of your comfort zone? Getting into your conscious self does not mean you have to do a physical change of place. You can go out and just learn a new skill or trade. There are plenty of online courses through numerous universities that offer ways for you to learn something new. Maybe learning a new language, reading a book that you swear you would never read. I'm more of a nonfiction, spirituality, religion, theology. That's my wheelhouse of books that I love to read. And so getting out of my routine would be reading a fiction book. Something that's, John Grisham or something like that. That's getting out of that routine. Find a way to be contested in your mind or your body or your spirit. And your conscious self will jump into the driver's seat like a 15-year-old with a newly printed learner's permit. Shout out to Jonathan, my nephew. He's a 15-year-old with a newly issued learner's permit. In our gospel passage today, I'm pretty sure that all theologians and scholars would agree with me. Peter's nuts. He's just crazy. This guy is a seasoned sailor, and he's surrounded by other seasoned sailors. Not all of the disciples were sailors, but especially those first couple that Jesus called were. Simon Peter is a seasoned sailor. He's been on the Sea of Galilee at night, in a storm, with the wind whipping and the waves rolling all over the place numerous times before. And I guarantee you, any seasoned sailor today would say they've been afraid before. That wasn't the scary part. The scary part is we're trying to keep the water out of the boat. We're trying to keep the thing going to the right place where we're trying to get to. And here's our teacher just coming out for a stroll on the waves. That was the terrifying part. And then Peter says, you know what, I'm going to go hang out with him for a little while. And he gets out of the boat to go see Jesus. That is what makes him crazy. I got a little bit of grace for him up until that point. That is what really makes him deranged, because why would you get out of the boat? That is so scary. And he was good at first. Keeps his eyes on Jesus, and he starts walking on the water, like walking on this concrete floor that we're standing on, I'm sure. I don't know. I've never walked on water. But it's when he took his eyes off of Jesus. It's when he started to pay attention to the things around him, to the turmoil, to the chaos that is surrounding him. That's when he got into trouble. We are in a storm right now. This community is in a storm. We're trying to sell this building. We're trying to find a place that's going to be a little bit more manageable for us. And I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't. But I'm trying to keep my eyes on Jesus, because I know that keeping my focus and my intention as pure as possible, that's what's going to save us at the end of the day. I don't know where we're going to land, or from what our church is going to be able to fit, what furniture is going to fit into the new place, or what part of town we're going to be in. But I'm doing my best to keep my eyes on Jesus, so I know what my intention is and where we are going. I'm going to look silly to a few of you right now. In June, I had my first procedure that required anesthesia 41 years into this life, and I was able to make it without the odd set of stitches and maybe an injection of pain to, close the skin or whatnot, sure. But never did I have to have general anesthesia, and I had my knee scoped back in June. I was very afraid and really anxious. The only experiences I had to rely on were seeing Grey's Anatomy, and that is rife with a bunch of stuff that is the remainder of a percentage of what's likely to happen. 999,000 times out of a million, procedures go fine. The doctors, the nurses, the technicians, they've done this stuff, they've practiced this stuff, they've seen just about everything that's going to happen in a procedure. And it's a knee scope. We're not talking about major surgery. But I was really scared. I was really anxious. Right up until they gave me the drugs. And then they could have taken me to Las Vegas, painted me blue, and put me in the Blue Man Group. I would not have known any different. The only thing I do remember is when I came out, I did my normal goodbye at a convenience store. I always try to say something nice to the convenience store clerks. Thanks a lot, everybody. Appreciate it. Apparently I was doing that to a bunch of doctors and nurses, and they were giggling at me. I didn't understand at the time, but I figured it out once I stopped being loopy. When I woke up in recovery, I knew that all of my fears and my anxiety were for naught, because the doctors and nurses, they took care of me. They knew what they were doing. Even with my sleep apnea issues, because I'm a fat guy, they took care of it. They handled it like pros. And I lost my fear of anesthesia and major surgeries. Okay, I'm not ready to have a major surgery now. That's not what I'm saying. But the next time I have to have surgery, I'm going to be a little less anxious and a little less scared because I had this experience. So what is it that you need to lose? Do you have anxiety? Fear? Complacency? A fervent desire to not be affected by life at all? Ooh, that one I wrote in for me, by the way, that's mine. A fervent desire not to be affected by life. That's one of the things that I struggle with on a daily basis. What is it that you need to lose? What is it that we need to lose? Collectively, let's take a chance. Let's all do the crazy thing and get out of the boat. Put our eyes on Jesus and just start walking towards Him. Let's use this risk of selling our building and moving as a way to step out and find a way to be different than any other church in Abilene, Texas. And I don't know the answer to that question. How can we be different than everybody else in Abilene? I don't have the answer to those questions any more than you do. But I know where it is. It's hiding behind our fear and anxiety and our complacency and our desire, fervent desire, to not be affected by life. So let's do the crazy thing together, all right? In the name of the Creator and the Redeemer and the Sustainer of all life, amen.